my best to be all of the good.
Okay, somebody is recording this meeting. Wow. So let's wait a few minutes. Somebody's adulting even better than me. I appreciate that. So let's wait a few minutes for our colleagues to join in, and then I will do a screen share. So Lonnie, turn on your camera. Brandon, turn on your camera.
Oh, turn on your camera. Yeah. I'm also not muted.
Thank you, Brandon. You're present if your camera is on. Well, okay, who has the puppies?
Who has the what?
I can hear dogs barking.
It's my dog. It's mine. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just jealous. That's great. Which dogs?
Was that?
Which dogs do you have? Which?
Oh, it's a Chug. It's a part Chihuahua and Pug. Yeah.
Oh.
A Chug.
A Chug.
Chug. That's actually really funny.
Amazing. Like the other day, I was on a walk. My neighbors came out. And they had this tiny little darling puppy, just this little ball of love. And I go up and I pick him up, and he's looking in my face. And I said, "What's that?" And they go, "Oh, it's a Shih Tzu." Very nice thing to say about your dog. Like Shih Tzu, so a Shih Tzu. Like
that's funny.
Shih Tzu. That's a thing. Okay, so let's wait until 10:02. Okay, we've got Cassidy who's joined us, and Meredith. Brooklyn and Christopher look like they're trying to join us, but haven't joined us yet. Oh, and Carly's now here. Excellent. And Anya is also trying to join us. All right. Brooklyn is now here. It looks like Christopher's still trying to get in. Oh, Makai is trying to join us. Oh. It looks like Anya is still trying to join us. Okay, it is 10:02. So, full disclosure. Was it clear from the introductory video that none of you have to be here? Right? But this is a way for you to count attendance. Now, if there's days you can't make it, you can still log on, watch this video later. The link will be linked in the module later today. And therefore, you can watch the video and take the quiz. If you're here and your camera's on and you're obviously attentive, then you don't have to take it. Okay? So Leilani, could you wave for everybody, please? Okay, she's not going to wave. But you guys see later. And she is currently taking roll, so therefore giving you 3 points for being 14. Okay, everybody. Teams is not my favorite program. But we will, drive this together. Okay. Any questions before I start talking about some of the classes? Nope. Okay. So if it does, just put your hand in the air like you're a true player. And we will talk. So let me show you how I get this. Leilani, can you see my screen? The canvas screen? Excellent. Okay. So what I'd like you guys to do is go under Files. And I'll show you where. Hey, Kelly! We have another colleague join us. So go under Files if you would like to. Click on Dimensions. We can introduce part of this course by talking about one of these files. It's this one right. So if you all would be so kind as to either share with my screen, or if you want to see it on your own screen, that's fine. Go ahead and look at this. So some of you may be familiar with one, either, or both of these images. So let's talk about the topic. This is a picture of Regina K. Walters right before she was killed. Now, the man who killed her, when they caught him, he was a truck driver. And when they caught him, he had half a dozen pictures much like this, where it depicted young women in black shoes, a black skirt with short hair. And he took these pictures right when it became obvious that he was young. So in this particular case, he told her that he was taking a picture of her, and he had forced her out into this room home, like gunpoint. And then takes the photograph right as he tells her that he was going to shoot her and was raising the gun. So he takes the Polaroid right at this particular moment, and he takes these particular pictures as a way for him to relive these particular moments over and over. Many of you may be aware that it's not uncommon for serial killers to take mementos of their victims. There are some serial killers who don't. They're very much in the moment, but others don't. And Regina K. Walters' murder very much kept trophies. In fact, that's one of the reasons because so I'd like to compare the with the lower. What you're looking at an aerial photo of a small village in Pakistan. So there on the left hand side, you see these mud huts. In the field, you see a picture of one of the little kids with huts. Now, this child living in this particular mud huts makes us wonder in the world would they roll out a photograph that far. They're having a hard time hearing me. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, like super bad, my dude.
well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Okay. So where did I lose you? Has it been the whole
It's kind of been the whole time. I've just been socially anxious to make it aware. So
well, thank you for loving me enough to overcome your anxiety. I appreciate it.
anytime.
How can you hear me now? Or is it still muffled?
No, it's actually significantly better now.
Huh.
So keep doing what you're doing right now.
Good. Like laptop around. Okay.
I guess. Sure.
So hey, if it works, right? Okay, so let's go back to Regina K. Okay. So Leilani, would you do me a favor, or Kelly, when you're done doing what you're doing, would you find out where the microphone is on a MacBook Air so I can figure out what I'm covering up over that mutes it? Okay, so back to Regina K. So thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. So back up to the top image. What I was attempting to explain is this is a photograph of Regina K. Walters. In this photograph, she's 15 years of age, and this photograph was taken right before she was born. Her murderer was a truck driver, and he would prey on young women. He had half a dozen of these photographs in his truck when the FBI caught him. And every one of the images depicts a young woman in black shoes, a black dress, and he had cut their hair off, often forcibly, so they had short. Well, what he would do is he would kill them, and right before he killed them, he shot Regina Kay, and he told her what he was going to do. So this is her raising up her hands in a useless gesture of self-defense or self-protection right before he shoots him. And so he had drug her out to this abandoned barn at gunpoint and murdered her, like he had done numerous of them. And so we were comparing and contrasting that with the lower image, which on the left side, there is a series of mud huts, and then on the right side, you see a large rolled out photograph, a large depiction of one of the children who lives in this particular hut. And so this is a little village in Pakistan. And we might kind of be curious, why in the world would they be rolling out large images that can only be seen from the air of the children? Well, you'll notice the title of that photograph is Not Bug Splats. When U.S. military intel indicates that there might be somebody involved in anti-American terrorist activity, notice the language is might be, that there might be somebody involved in the terrorist activity, and they might be in a particular location. The U.S. military assigns a drone pilot to fly over and drop bombs on those particular villages. And the drone pilots call them bug splats, splattering bugs. Like you can see, if you zoom into the image, you can see people on the road, for example, like little insects from the aerial drone point of view. And so these soldiers would then very carefully drop the bomb with pinpoint accuracy and destroy an entire village, men, women, children, everyone, if it meant that there was a possibility that they might kill somebody involved in anti-terrorism. So an artist, finding out that that's what the American military was doing, actually set up a nonprofit to take a picture, a photograph of one of the children, and to roll that particular picture out in the field. So therefore, they're no longer bugs. Right now, I can see the face of the person that I kill when I drop the bomb. But if I drop a bomb, I'm going to kill this little 10-year-old. Now, from a psychological standpoint, this had a very interesting effect. That when this artist started rolling out photographs of these children, the rates of burnout and traumatization amongst the drone pilots skyrocketed. Went from effectively zero, after all they were doing is splattering bugs, to pretty high. It became an effort of will for the drone pilots to do the job. So one of the things that we will get to struggle with throughout this course is which of these images better depicts humanity. Is the murder of Regina Kay Walters, is this an image of evil? Is the fact that this artist is rolling out pictures of children in order to give a face to the victims of these bombs? Is the bombing of these children evil? Is the bombing of these villages evil? I wonder. So for those of you that are here, what do you think?
Can you hear me okay?
I can, Anya. I can't see you though. Oh, I can see you now. Hi. It's good to meet
Hello. I was having trouble again also hearing what you were talking about about the lower photo of the child rolled out. I couldn't hear if it was the actual murderer who did that or like who rolled that photo out. I couldn't understand. It was a little quiet.
you. Really? I wonder what's going on with this laptop that it's so quiet.
I don't know.
Up next time. Can you hear me okay now, Anya?
Yeah.
Okay. So the lower image was actually, okay, let me back up. That picture is taken in Pakistan. Okay. The U.S.
Okay.
military will fly drones in and drop bombs on villages where they believe there might be a chance that someone in the village is involved in anti-American terrorist activity. And so there have been many such sorties, many such missions on Pakistani and Afghanistani soil. And so a European artist, I believe he's Dutch, was so incensed and upset by this because he learned that the American military personnel call dropping bombs on villages or on people bug splats. They're just splattering bugs. Okay? And so he wanted to give a human face to the victims of these bombings.
Mm.
So he started a non-for-profit where he'd take pictures of members of these villages and then roll out the pictures in the fields next to the villages to give a human face to the victims. So were you able to hear that this time?
Yeah. So, and your question was about which photo is more evil or like
Or-
the intention?
Yes, like what is your interpretation? Like, does this involve human evil, either photo or both, and if so, how?
So I do have one more question. So would the military still drop bombs with the large pictures rolled out?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Rates of burnout and PTSD went way up amongst drone pilots when those pictures started to be rolled out.
So, I guess my first impression is that I guess I would just like have an argument for an argument. I would say the first one's very evil, because they're both evil, but the motives are different. Like the military have the big like, oh, we have they have a mission. Not saying it's not evil, that the fact that they know they're killing innocent people. But the guy is that taking picture of someone he's about to kill, that's pretty dark. I guess the military guys following orders have some other motives and motives that they're following. You know, they're following commands. But I guess I would say the first one's, just for argument's sake, is evil because it's very very intentional, and there's some other motives behind that one. You know, his own personal motives. It's not a job motive. So those are just some things that came to me right off the top of my head.
Awesome. Thank you, Anya. I appreciate you sharing that.
No worries.
And so how about for some of the rest of you? What comes to mind when I show this and we're wondering what human evil is? How is what's depicted here evil, and in what ways? Anya shared that Anya?
It's Anya. You got it right the first time.
Excellent, thank you. And so Anya shared that the first one, because it was individually motivated and for callous and cruel reasons, very selfish reasons, that the top one depicted a particular form of evil. That the bottom image is people just following orders, right? That it's a different set of motivations. So therefore there seems to be a particularly personal evil in the first one, a very personally directed, personally willed evil. Whereas in the bottom image, it's more impersonal. Is that fair to say, Anya?
Yes. And just also like they both have an evil to it, I guess, if you know you're killing innocent people. But yeah, just the motives are different and they're both pretty bad. But yeah, I would say the top one's more evil, just for argument's sake.
Right, and thank you, because that's exactly what we're going to do. In this class, I hope you all are realizing that I'm not going to define something in a hard way and say, on this exam, what is the true definition of evil, right? We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to wonder, and we're going to have some heartache around these definitions and what they imply. So
how about for the rest of you? Like how do you see this? In what way, or even do these images depict moments of human evil or evil activities?
Yeah, I think Anya brought up something when she was trying to describe it, just barely, where she said innocence, and I think both of these instances and situations both beg the question of like innocence and evil. And I think, for argument's sake, and from my point of view, evil is preying on innocence and preying on people who don't really have a say, who are underprivileged and overlooked, like for the women and children in this village who weren't necessarily doing anything wrong, but suffered the consequences anyway. And then the top picture, obviously, of the girl who didn't really have any agency in that situation, didn't want to be there, but was forced against her will. So I think both of these are evil in that they prey on people's innocence and inability to do something about their situation.
Wow. So one of the things that you're evoking, Lexi, is not just innocence, but also power. But when people are powerless, yeah. Yeah. So, hear me? Okay.
So I switched computers. Did that help? Okay, I see nods from Lexi and Amber and Brooklyn. Christopher, can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. Carly? Awesome. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to highlight some language that we're engaging in. And it's important for us to be aware of the language that we use. one of them, we're going to counter two myths in this particular class, okay? And why I bring up the images of Regina Kay as well as the bug splats image. We have two tendencies in the field of psychology, two things that we are mistaught. The first thing that we are mistaught is that issues of moral good and moral evil are relative, okay? Like you'll notice that when we're talking, we're saying, well, from my point of view and in my opinion, as though other people can have a very different opinion or a very different point of view that is somehow equally true at the same time. So this position is called relativism. And it's important for us to realize that relativism is deeply problematic. Okay? If I say, oh, my morality is mine and my moral point of view is mine, and therefore it's subject only to me and true only for me, then what we have is a big conceptual problem. And that is that then my moral truth claims have lost all force and all power. So if you were engaging in atrocity, okay, I'm looking at you, Linda. If you're engaging in atrocity, right? If you're engaging in atrocity, I've lost all moral claim to stand up against you, right? If it's all relative, then your morality in engaging in a behavior that I see as atrocious is equally as valid as your behavior is in engaging in the atrocity, okay? So therefore, I don't have any moral force when it comes to, or any valid moral position to inform your moral point of view. So the first myth we're really going to struggle with in this class is the myth of moral relativism, right? The morality is relative. At the same time, though, we're also going to struggle with another myth, and this is myth number 2. And that is that morality can be dogmatically defined. This is what's called the myth of dogmatism. Okay? Dogmatism is this position that we can codify, define, concretize moral notions, excuse me, of good and evil. Okay? That we can write those out and say, okay, every time, in every place, in every culture, these following actions are good and these following actions are evil, right? That's dogmatism. Here are the rules you must obey to be a good person, and if you break them, you're bad, right? Dogmatism. Dogmatism is also a myth and also presents a problem, because what might be dogmatically or certainly morally true in one particular position isn't necessarily morally true in another. It gets really complicated. And so some people then, to cope with dogmatism, will switch back to relativism and go, okay, well, if dogmatism is a myth, then relativism must be true. No, I've already established relativism is a myth. And so therefore then people retreat to dogmatism. Well, then what's the answer? So later in the semester, we'll have a unit on kaijustry. Okay, some of you may already be familiar with that. We'll introduce that in our next discussion on dimensions of thinking, dimensions of moral thought. Okay, those of you that have taken the psychotherapy class are already familiar with dimensional thinking. And so you guys will be able to sing along with me as we talk about that in this class. So there are positions that are neither relativistic nor dogmatic that might be helpful when we are wondering about what is morally good and what is morally evil, particularly the causes of moral good and moral evil. Okay, so let's see, Anya and Lexi were kind enough to talk about some of the distinctions in terms of innocence and power, intent, etc., vis-a-vis the depictions of the Regina Kay Walters picture as well as the Bug Splats picture. So a question I would put to you all is the man who killed Regina Kay Walters evil, and are the people who, just following orders, drop bombs on children evil? Which ones do you see as evil? And is it a matter of degree or is it absolute? The guy who killed Regina Kay, he took a 15-year-old prostitute off the street. He's a good man, right? Or is it because he preyed on innocence, because he killed somebody helpless, he's evil? Likewise, what more evils have been done in this world than by people who are just following orders? Some of you remember the Nuremberg trials, right? Just following orders was the common excuse for genocide. So from your point of view, how do you understand these? And then we'll give that as an example of a position outside of relativism and dogmatism. Like, which is the worst evil? Play devil's or angel's advocate with me for a minute. Not that we're debating. Chris, please jump in. Can I call you Chris?
Yes, please. It takes less oxygen to say Chris.
I can't hear him. Your mic is, it shows me that you're not muted, bud. You're not muted, but for some reason I can't hear you. Ah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear myself through Leilani's computer. I still can't hear you, bud.
I heard Chris, if that helps.
Muted.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Lexi's nodding her head. Lexi, can you hear him? Am I the only one that can't hear him? My gosh.
I can hear him, yeah.
Okay, hold on, Chris. Okay, try again.
Okay, is it working?
Gotcha.
Okay. Now let me try to remember what I was gonna say. Oh, so I would say that the act of removing somebody's life that doesn't deserve it might be evil. But I would say that I would argue that the man who murdered the girl was following a deeper psychological order, much like the military people are following orders from higher authorities. There's some sort of driving force in his mind that is justifying the action and is reaching for it to fill some sort of need. And so he may just be following deeper orders within his mind.
Wow. So that's a very interesting argument. I'm very compelled by that, Chris, because what you have here is there's orders and there's orders, right? Depending on how we understand human beings to be psychologically, that there are some of our colleagues in the field of psychology who say that our behavior is a manifestation of causes driven by needs that are inherent within us, and we don't have any say over the origin of need, right? I don't have any say for the fact I got to eat in order to survive, right? I don't have any say, according to these same psychologists, that I need to kill in order to feel okay, right? For those of you that have studied up on serial killers, that sometimes the only time they feel anything other than pervasive numbness is the excitement around preying on human beings, right? They didn't ask to have that need. It is something that was given to them by nature or nurture. So, great argument. Thank you, Chris. So, other points of view. Brandon, please jump in the pool. Can't hear you yet, but I can see that your mic is off. I'm sorry, that you're unmuted. Oh, I can faintly hear you.
Is that good?
I can barely hear you with my old ears, so give it a whirl, bud.
All right. So just kind of thinking about the pilots, villagers, kind of seems to me like calling them just bug squats demonizes the people. In my mind, that's kind of an evil thing to do. You're not only taking away a person's identity, you're actively killing them, kind of justifying it to make things as bad about it.
Well, if I can offer some language, bud, there is something similar between these two images. Okay, not that you're pointing out the similarity, but you're evoking a construct that's important when we're talking about human evil. Both of them involve objectification of another being as non-human in order to eliminate that being, right? With Regina K. Walters, it takes this will of effort to destroy another human being, right? We objectify them first and then we destroy them. So we dehumanize them. Likewise, you'll notice that the title is Bug Splats, that these villagers are dehumanized in order to be destroyed. So therefore, the dehumanization seems to be this interesting link between the two. And therefore, to your point, Brandon, and that is that the bug splats, right, the objectification of other people seems to be a part of the evil actions that unfold from there. Okay. Great points. Okay, so I'd like to highlight again, we're kind of trying to abandon relativism and trying to abandon dogmatism here, because what we're talking about are the actions themselves and the ways in which these actions are malevolent, destructive, problematic, etc. That it's not just relative, right? That if you're sitting down with a Regina K. Walters killer and he's arguing with you that what he did was good, you see how with relativism that doesn't make any sense, right? But with dogmatism, it also doesn't make any sense. With relativism, oh, you're right, Mr. Serial Killer, sir. Let's just let you out of jail because, you know, my moral truth and yours can differ and it's all relative and your moral truth is just as valid as mine. So keep preying on underage prostitutes, right? Whereas dogmatism, it's a problem as well because now we don't understand why and how it's a problem. We just obey the rules, right? Like your point, Brandon, and relative to some points that Lexi and Anya made as well. If we're just following rules, we're just following orders, oh, and Christopher also brought this up, then we might be perpetuating some things that are deeply problematic. So you notice that we're also focusing on actions more than people. We're not calling people evil. We'd like to do that for Regina K. Walters' killer. And then we learn about his history, and this gets back to Christopher's point. Now, I'm not a determinist. My philosophy is not a non-deterministic philosophy, nor am I a libertarian. At the same time, though, the killer Regina K. Walters was seriously and severely abused by his mother. They were poor, and the outfit that mom usually wore, especially when she was bringing men home, was black shoes, a little black dress, and mom had short hair. This doesn't excuse his actions, and I'm not making that argument. Instead, isn't it interesting that we begin to find where these actions come from if we look? In Buddhism, there's an argument that there's no such thing as evil people, only poorly educated ones, right? That it's about teaching people how to behave. Per Christopher's argument, though, if people are driven by a need to kill, then it's hard to educate them around that. So when we look at the bottom image, how many of the people who are drone pilots signed up because they really wanted to drop bombs on men, women, and children? They were just like, oh yeah, I just want to just murder the hell out of people with bombs. And the answer is very few. Believe it or not, they're out there. There are those who really wanted to do that. But for many of them, that's not what they signed up for. They were assigned a job, right? And per my discussion earlier, that many of them were traumatized when the artist began rolling out huge murals and huge pictures of the children who would be victims. And so for me, I've had a client who was once a drone operator and the horrible trauma he suffered, knowing how many men, women, and children he killed at the orders of someone else. Okay. If it was all relative, the burnout rates amongst drone pilots would not have increased. If we're all dogmatic, they would all respond similarly to their actions. Right? Instead, we see a variability. So, a story relative to human objectification. In Africa, East Africa, there are two tribes of people, the Hutus and the Tutsis, that share the same territory. And a genocidal war started between the two groups. The Hutus came into a Tutsi village, and the Tutsi fighters were out looking for the Hutus who had been raiding throughout the Tutsi villages. And so the Hutus come into the village, and there's just women and children left. And to save ammunition, they then attack the village with machetes and knives, and they just go hacking through the women and children. They killed about 53 people. The next morning, the Hutus camp a little ways away from the village where they've massacred everyone with blades. And the next morning, they wake up and there are feral dogs eating the corpses of the women and children. Sorry to ruin your appetite there, Lexi. And so eating the remains of these women and children. And these Hutu fighters are so disgusted and incensed at the animals that they then kill the animals with the machetes. In fact, they even spend bullets on killing the dogs as the dogs are running away. And they remember they wouldn't even spend bullets on killing the women or children, right? And so this is a very interesting psychological case. And we see it again and again through time and place in history. If I wish to commit violence against you, I objectify you first. I turn you into a non-human object in order to destroy you. What's interesting about this case is the way in which the next morning the Hutus rehumanized the very people that they had killed. Remember, they were disgusted that the dogs would prey on human bodies. They weren't disgusted with themselves for killing the women and children with machetes. They were disgusted at the dogs. So the corpses became human again, and that they then had to kill the dogs because the dogs were ravaging human corpses. Okay? And they were so humanized, in fact, that the warriors would spend bullets on killing the dogs when they wouldn't even spend bullets to kill the women and children. So one of the reasons why we have a class like this in psychology isn't just because how metal, we get to talk about good and evil and get college credit for it. What? Oh yeah. But this begs very interesting questions about the human condition, right? And the ways in which we are beings in a particular way. One of the things that was very interesting working as a psychologist in prisons is how many of the men suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, some of you would say, of course, they've lived pretty hard lives because I was working in maximum and super maximum security prisons. Some of the men suffered PTSD from the trauma that was inflicted upon them, right? From being shot, stabbed, raped, abused as children, etc. There was a lot of that to work with. But there was also a lot of trauma from the actions the men had committed. One of my clients, for example, was owed some significant sum of money. And he's a very gentle soul, as paradoxical or contradictory as that may sound. And the young man who owed him a lot of money, and my client at that point was not a successful drug dealer, he was trying to become a successful drug dealer, and he had it in his head that in order to be a successful drug dealer, what he needs to do is to commit or be willing to commit a certain level of violence. So there was another young man who owed him a significant sum of money for drugs that didn't pay up. And so he and two of his friends attacked this young man and beat him unconscious in the young man's home. They then rolled the victim up in a carpet, like a Persian rug, and carried his unconscious form out into the back of a large utility van. They then drove the utility van out past a lake, not too far from where that prison is. As they got out, they're like, what do we do with him? Because they could hear him moaning. He couldn't escape from the rug because he's burritoed up inside this particular rug, and he can't escape from it. So they're wondering what to do. And so they don't know, but they realize if they let this guy go, he's going to snitch on them, right? And they'll all end up going to prison. So the three of them come to the conclusion that what they'll have to do is kill him. And because my client, the wannabe mega crime narco drug lord, is involved, then the other two select him to pull the trigger. So they brought a shotgun along, a big old goose gun used for, hunting geese by the lake, and he pulls it out and he pumps 3 rounds of shot into the writhing form wrapped up in the rug. Okay. Now, for those of you that know anything about firearms, birdshot is not the most effective way to kill somebody. Okay. The pellets are too small and too light to penetrate very deeply. And so the young man inside, having been shot 3 times with birdshot, now he's got birdshot inside his body, but it's not penetrating deep enough, or the pellets aren't big enough to kill him quickly, is screaming in agony. And so out of desperation, my client and his 2 friends grab the rug with the young man inside of it, pull it out, and then they put the shotgun against where they believe the man's head is and kill him that way. They put a whole load of birdshot directly into his skull to get him to quit screaming. Now it's my client's turn to wake up into the middle of the night screaming. And the reason he was referred for therapy is because that's what would happen. He would wake up the entire cell block because he'd jerk wide awake in his cell, screaming, having flashbacks of the murder that he had committed. And so in deconstructing that murder with him, it was the same thing. That the person wrapped up in the rug, well, the person that they attacked in his apartment was the asshole. He was the snitch. He was the one, that bitch owes me money, right? And then wrapping him up in the rug and taking him out to the desert, then he was the problem. He was the screaming one. He was the object that must be silenced and the object that must be ceased. But in my client's nightmares at 3 a.m. in the prison, it's the screams of desperation and pain, the humanity of the person that he killed that haunts him. So I don't know that we can claim this objectively and dogmatically, but thematically perhaps, maybe we can wonder if human objectification, turning other beings into objects, might be part of what facilitates evil action. Right? Maybe that's part of it. For those of you that have researched sexual abuse of children or sexual assault, you'll find a trend and a theme that goes right along those lines. The other day, for example, I was with a couple of my oldest sisters. So they are 5 and 6 years older than me, respectively. And I was sharing how proud I was, again, not revealing any confidences, but just how proud I was of a client of mine who was really flourishing in a phase of post-traumatic growth after a brutal sexual assault. One of my sisters, feminist, hardworking woman, leader in her field, looks at me, and I kid you not, guys, said, "Well, what was she wearing?" referring back to when my client was raped. And we were walking at the time, and I just stopped, like it just wiped my hard drive for a second. My blue screen just crashed, you know what I mean? What was she wearing? And I turned to my sister, who's got a doctorate degree. And I said, "What does that have to do with anything?" And my sister thankfully caught herself and realized that what she had said is it implied the victim was at fault, right? And so what I did is I riffed on that one of the things my sister was worried about was objectification. She didn't say it well or eloquently, and it was pretty victim blamey. But what excuses do people have to objectify us, right? Have you ever been objectified because of your sex? "Oh my gosh, Christopher is so intimidating because he's a guy. Brandon with that beard, he must be some kind of violent lumberjack serial killer," right? Have you women ever been objectified, for your sex, treated like you're a pair of legs or walking genitals or, something else, right? So objectification, I'm wondering if often, I can't say always, but if often is involved in human evil and human evil action. That in order for me to commit violence or cruelty against you, or to use you to sate my own needs or desires, that I must turn you into an object first to do so. Okay, so what are your thoughts about that? We've got just a few minutes left in the meeting. I'm curious what y'all think.
I have some thoughts. Can you hear me?
I can, Anya, please share.
Something that was kind of in my head. I have a really good friend who inspired me towards this psychology degree that I'm getting. So we've chatted lots about, she's a marriage and family therapist. So some studies about serial killers is control, meaning their control. So they didn't have control when they were abused. So their actions are, the way they can choose and control is by killing people or committing certain acts of whatever. So a lot of it was about control. I don't know if that answers your question, but that was just a thought that kept reoccurring. And then I guess another thought was the military men. I guess the evil ones were like those who made the orders. Who made those orders to kill those people? Anyways, those are just some thoughts that I had. I don't know if that answers your specific question now, but serial killers, it's a lot of the times about controlling a situation when they had no control during their trauma.
And not only that, but you also then kind of flipped that around on you and said that let's look at who has control in the case of violence, right? Who's the one giving the orders to drop the bombs, right? Who has the control? And so it's all about control. Well, in order for me to control you, I need to objectify you first, right? It turns out you and I are very much on the same page, because we can't control people well, but we can control objects. And so if I objectify you, then I can control you. But if you're a person, then I have to relate to you. But that's how I get used, right? And so it's through relationship. Well, guys, it is 10:50, so unfortunately, because some people believe in rules, we'll need to pause this course for now. So on Wednesday, we'll continue this and we'll begin our discourse on fourth dimensional thinking relative to the psychology of good and evil. So thank you all very much, and I will see you on Wednesday.